Hi, I'm Angela, and I want to talk to you about the clairs. What are the clairs? Well, you probably recognize some of the clairs. Clair is, by the way, French for clear. So all of this goes with clear something. So if you're clairvoyant, clairvoyance is clear seeing. So you've heard of this. Maybe you have clairvoyant gifts, and that's where you can see things. Now, personally, I rarely ever see things. I have members of my family who do have clairvoyance, but I never really got that. But it's a thing. It really is a thing where you can actually see the through the dimension, through the veil, or you can see the manifestation of certain energetic forms. Okay. And so there have been things I've seen, but I wouldn't necessarily call it clairvoyance because that's not an ongoing gift I have. What about you? So that's probably the most common thing we hear about seeing. I see dead people, for instance, or I see angels, or I see orbs, or I see fairies and other elementals, seeing auras around people. So there are people who have the gift of seeing, clear seeing, beyond what the regular physical eyes and senses, what you can see through the regular retina of your eyes. Okay, so another one is clairaudience. Clairaudience is, of course, hearing. It's clear hearing. So if you've heard people perhaps say, I heard my name called, so they sense that there's something extra sensory happening that they can hear it. And this happened to me maybe once or twice, but it's never been a thing for me either. I don't know about you, but some people, this is kind of the only way they really activate their psychic gifts, their intuitive gifts, is through clairaudience, clear hearing. And that could come in the form of their own voice, receiving the guidance, or the voice of someone else. So one time I was meditating and I had what I could swear was a visitation from Saint Benedict in my meditation. Yeah, because I go by his favorite motto, apparently, open the ear of my heart. And when he visited me in the meditation, he kind of joking and teased me a little bit. And he said, I hear you like my ditty. And so he kind of just, he sang the rest. It was like a song, a little song that he had. And he sang the rest of it. That was probably the most wild, well, probably not the most wild, but one of the most wild meditations I ever had, where I could have sworn it was St. Benedict showing up. And if it was a belligerent spirit, it certainly had a sense of humor. And I don't believe that. I really, truly feel like it was St. Benedict that came to me in the meditation. So that's an example of clairaudience, I would suppose, where I couldn't tell you for the life of me what he said. All these years later, I really wish after it was all done, I wrote it down, but I don't remember. So anyway, that's clairaudience. Now, what I usually say is the gift I have, which is claircognizance or clairsentience. And that is where you have clear knowing, clear feeling, clear sensing. You sense the energy. You feel the energy. You have a sudden knowing, and you know that the knowing came from some translogical place. And it's more than intuition, because intuition is usually sort of an internal thing. But when you have clear knowing, for me, this is how I am communicated with by angels. I have clear knowing, clear cognizance, claircognizance, clairsentience. So maybe this is something you've experienced before. It's a little trickier, but you just know. And there's a strong differentiation between receiving a message and knowing what the message is, and hearing the message like clairaudience is a difference versus having just an internal sense of your intuition, and your intuition is speaking to you. So that's the difference. Then there's one that happened to me twice in my life that I can recall. Well, maybe 3 times. And it's really a weird one, but it's called Clairsalience. And that's where you have a clear smell or scent or aroma. And this was amazing. I had just had this really cool mystical experience back in 2008. And for the whole week after that mystical experience, I kept having these like everything like greens looked purple and everything was so intense. It was such an amazing week after that mystical experience and the encounter I had with the angelic presence. And I was picking my daughter up from an event. She had done this overnight, this weekend long retreat. And I had pulled up and she got into the vehicle and all of a sudden it smelled like roses. And I said to her, "Hey, did you use new shampoo? You do have a rose scent on for some reason?" She was in, middle school at the time, so it wasn't like she was wearing a lot of perfume or anything. And she said, no, actually, I need a shower after we spent all weekend at the camp. Can't wait to get home and get a shower. I could not shake the smell. That was, no. Now, later I learned that very often people have reported that Mother Mary, Jesus' mother, will show up with the scent of roses. She's often called the Lady of the Roses. Maybe that could have been happening. My mother's heart was leaping for joy to hear, my daughter's voice again and her to be there after she was gone all weekend. And I was picking her up, excited to see her. And I smelled roses. And that was like a really cool Clairsalience moment. And I've had a couple of other experiences like that, but those are rare for me. I just know it happens. I've had the experience, so I know this can happen. And there are people who have reported this. One of my dear friends also had a recent experience of Clairsalience. And I told her, I said, I know what that is, and this is what it's called. Now, there's also something, I've never experienced this, at least I don't think I have, and that's Clairgustance. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's taste, clear taste. So you're tasting something energetically, with your sense of taste being heightened, even though you're not eating anything and there shouldn't be a sense of taste. But suddenly you have a taste of something in your mouth, I imagine. That's how it must be. Now, there's also something I've heard called Clairempathy, or a lot of people just say empathy. They don't put the clair in front of it, but it's clear. It's a clear feeling of others' emotions. You feel others' emotions. That is something that I think can also be lumped in under clairsentience, because you have the sense of feeling or knowing in a clairsentience situation. But I think it's a little different with a clairempathy than with clairsentience, because with the clairsentience, you're not necessarily really deeply into the feeling. You just have the feeling. And then you have the knowing that goes with that. With empathy, though, you're really feeling the other people's emotions. This is not something I have personally experienced to that depth. At least I don't think I have. Maybe it's just such a part of me, the empathetic part of me is so strong that I just kind of take it for granted because it's been like that since I was a kid. But it's not like I can walk into the room and then suddenly know what someone's feeling. I'm good at sensitive, and it really does go back to the clairsentience, I believe, the claircognizance that I have. And it's not really so much feeling their emotions, but just kind of understanding that there's something up and sensing that. Anyway, those are the clairs, in case you were wondering. Some of these you may have heard of course, and some of these you may not have ever heard of before. I just thought it'd be fun to talk about that. So what's your experience of the clairs? Do you have any of these or all of these experiences happen to you? We all have heightened senses beyond just the 5 senses. And so it's very possible. And I think as time goes on and our human consciousness continues to raise, we'll have more and more of these gifts coming online, more of these clairs happening in more obvious ways. Not ways that we go, oh, that was weird, and just brush it off, but to actually pay attention to it and notice it and experience it and be grateful for the gift it brings us, because it usually is very benign. Anyway, so that's what I want to talk about today. I love it. If I could hear from you, tell me what your experiences are of the clairs. Okay, so until I talk to you next time, be very well.